Okay, and welcome back, students taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Apps. We're doing Chapter 9, the 30 portion of payroll. And now we're going to talk about administration. Okay. On this slide, you're looking at the front cover of the Circular E Employer's Tax Guide for the year 2015. This here tax guide, which is pretty thick, goes into detail how the IRS calculates, payroll. Okay. What they do is they send this publication, and you can look at, go to this web address or do a search on Circular E, and you can see the PDF for the for that publication. They send this to each and every business, because remember, the here's the business, right? This is the business. Here's you. Okay, and here's the government, right? They're not going to chase you for your taxes. They're going to go to Mr. Business. So in going to Mr. Business, they've created the Circular E, which tells the Mr. Business exactly how to calculate the payrolls, okay, and also gives the tax rates, for the federal withholding, Social Security, Medicare, things like that. Okay, and they send this each and every year to the business. Now, it doesn't mean that during the year they can't change rates, they can't change percentages, they can't change bases. They could, okay, but for the most part, let's say you receive that the business receives it in February. If there's a change made to how to calculate payroll, say in, I don't know, July, they will send out a documentation as to exactly what the business needs to do. Okay, so this here is this is the official guide as to how to go about calculating your paychecks. Okay, all right, and that's why the businesses do what they do and base the numbers all upon that. All right, otherwise, as you recall, as far as the business is concerned, I should just pay you the $400. For $10 an hour at 40 hours a week. I should just pay you the $400 and be done with it. But the government doesn't allow that. The government says, Mr. Business, you take out the $250 in deductions and only pay the employee $150, and you send us the $250. Okay. All right. So when you go into when you get hired, it doesn't matter whether it's the CEO, executive management, managers, even hourly employees. Everyone has to fill out a W-4 form. Okay, here's an example of it. Right, and what this W-4 form tells us, it allows the person who's doing payroll to know how much the business can withhold from the person's paycheck. Now notice this is for Alice Ray, and she's signing this here W-4 form. Okay, by her signing the form, this is giving the business the right to withhold based upon certain criteria. Okay, you can see the name here, you see the Social Security number, and it is 20XX because it's from the date that you sign it. You don't need to sign one of these each and every year. You sign it when you first get hired, and it stays applicable through the rest of your employment, unless, of course, you have some change from this form, which at that time you would actually go and sign a new one and create a new one. Right? But the important things to notice are, here's your date, here's your address, and here, whether you are single, married, but withholding at a higher single rate. Okay, so the way your federal taxes are calculated are based upon being single or married. Okay, and then line number 5 is the total number of the allowances you want. Okay, that you're able to claim, meaning how many additional people do you have to support. Okay, it says total number of allowances you are claiming from line H above, or from applicable worksheet on page 2. Well, I'm not going to go over that, but let's say I have 2 children. Okay, here I'm married. Okay, which when I make this married, that means I'm taking into consideration, um, both spouses. But the additional withholdings, this here too, means that there's 2 additional children that you're supporting. So you're allowed to take, you're able to take allowances for that. Now, be careful here, because if you, and let's say you have 2 children, okay, and you'll see in a later slide when we're talking about federal withholding, that you can claim anywhere from like 0 to 9 allowances, meaning you have 9 children. Well, if you have 2 children, and you'll see that when you have 0 allowances, you have the most amount of money withheld from your paycheck. But when you have 9 allowances, you have the least amount, okay? And the reason for that is because you have more mouths to feed, so the government doesn't withhold as much, so that you have more money in your pocket to be able to feed those 9 children, right? Now, you're saying you have 2 children, and last year around tax time, there was this big article about how a lot of the Asians were claiming 9 withholdings, okay? And coming from their culture, what they're doing is they're saying, okay, here's my house, okay, and here's me, here's my spouse, I have 1 child, but I have my mother, my father, my spouse's mother, my spouse's father, okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then maybe I have an uncle, 6, an aunt, number 7, okay. Let's say I have, my uncle's brother, 8, and my auntie's brother, 9. Okay, so what they were doing is they were actually claiming 9 allowances. Okay, and they were getting these huge tax refunds in the thousands of dollars. Okay, because of they're having paid in the most amount, but yet they're claiming 9 allowances when they did their taxes, which means they paid in a lot, but they shouldn't have. They should have only paid in a little. So they were getting all of this money back. So they were getting thousands and thousands of dollars back, because they're saying all of these people lived under this same roof. Right now, it you know the that's not right, because here's me, here's my spouse, and here's my child. My child is less than 18 years old. Okay, but all of these other people here are all adults. Okay, they're over 18 years old, right? And they're not going to school, right? They're not in college or whatever have you. So all of these people can't be claimed as an allowance. But a lot of the Asians were claiming it, because in their country, right, everybody lives in this same house. And the way they look at allowances is, well, if you're living in my house and I'm taking care for you, I should get that as an allowance. Well, it doesn't work that way in the United States. So the United States sits there and says, okay, you're in this case here, they're claiming 2. But if you end up claiming, you might even be able to claim 3, but if you claim too many, you're actually going to get audited and hit with interest and penalties, and get whacked pretty good for that. Okay, if they follow up on it. Now, for them to follow up on the Asians, they're not doing it for some reason. Okay, now. But that's the government shtick. But I just want you to know that when you're taking your allowances, only allow for the correct number of children that are less than 18 years old and not going to college. Um, if you wanted to claim only 1, if you have 2 children, you only want to claim 1, that's fine. You can also claim 0, okay, even though you have 2 children. But what that means is you're going to have more money withheld from your paycheck when you're doing for your federal withholding tax. And if you have more money withheld from your paycheck for federal withholding, that means you have less in your pocket in order to be able to support that number of children, right? And you'll see that when we actually look at the tables. I'll try to point that out to you so that you can see how that affects you, okay? But right now, we're talking about this W-4 form. And so you're claiming two withholdings. Now line 6 here, you can have an additional amount taken out of your paycheck, right? Some people, you might have an event. Let's say, for example, you know that you contract to write books, okay, for a company, and let's say that company is going to pay you, I don't know, an additional, say, $2,000, right? But they're going to pay you the full $2,000 and they're not going to withhold anything from it. Well, if you know that's going to happen during the course of the year, you might say to yourself, well, maybe I'll have, I don't know, an extra $25 withhold every single paycheck, okay? So that you're having more money withheld, so that when it comes at the end of the year to do tax time, you've actually had the appropriate amount withheld for the taxes that would be due on this 2,000. Okay, you can receive that check for 2,000, but you're responsible to pay the taxes on it. And you can either pay it at one time at the end of the year, or like on a payment basis by having $25 withheld over and above what you're supposed to pay, so that at the end of the year there's no surprises. You've already had a portion of that money taken out. Okay, and so that's how this W-4 form is filled out. Okay, and that tells the bookkeeper, the payroll person, exactly how to structure your federal withholding tax. Remember, this is for federal withholding tax. How to determine, based upon that Circular E, which is, they're sent, by the government, on how much to withhold from your paycheck to pay for your federal withholding. Now, does this have to be absolutely accurate? No. Okay. It just needs to be close, because at the end of the year, we all know that we have to file our W-2 tax forms, okay? And filing that W-2 tax form, it's a reconciliation to make sure that you had the right amount, you paid the right amount of federal withholding tax, okay? So if you're short, you don't pay enough federal withholding tax, well, then you're going to have to write a check for the amount you owe on your W-2 form. If you paid more than you're supposed to for federal withholding, well, then you're going to get money back when you file your W-2, okay? All right, so with that, that's the W-4, and let's see here. Yeah, okay. I'm going to quickly cover the payroll registers instead of making a separate video. I mean, I am at 13 minutes, but this is relatively simple. All right. Okay, so you fill out the W-4 form, okay, which tells the payroll person exactly how to calculate your federal withholding tax. But they go over and they have something called a payroll register. Now, the payroll registers are not, there is no one set form, okay? They can look very different. This is the one from in your textbook, okay? And you see where it says A all the way through M over here, and there's, these are just explanations of what that amount is. Like, for example, here for A, it's telling you that the allowances and marital status, that person is married and has 2 allowances. Okay, the cumulative earnings, for the whole year was, that's your year to date of 108,000. This here person gets a salary per week of $22.50. So that's what all of these are for, and you can read about those in your textbook. But I want you to also just see that this is a different payroll register, okay? And this is only the left half, okay? I'm not going to put on the right half, right? Meaning that there is another side to this. But what I want you to see here is that, this here payroll register looks different than this payroll register. However, all the same information gets put on both of them. So what ends up happening is, you as an employee, a new employee, you come in and you're hired. You'll fill out your W-4 form, which tells the payroll person how to calculate your paycheck. They'll create a payroll register, all right, or add you, so this is John Doe, if they're using this one, okay, and they'll fill it when it comes time to do payroll. they'll do all the calculations and fill out all of these columns in order to calculate your paycheck so that they have a record to know how much you were paid and what the deductions were for each and every individual, each and every paycheck. In this payroll register, you would have John Doe, say Betty Smith, say Pete Jones, okay? And this would be a record of this particular payroll for whatever payroll period that happens to be. And it would show how much they're paid, blah, 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 all of the additional data in order to start to calculate your gross pay, what the deductions are, and what the net pay ends up being, okay? Or they can do, a payroll register like this and do it individually for each and every single pay period. There's no right or wrong way with it. It's just a record keeping that the payroll clerk does in order to be able to calculate your paycheck. Okay. So with that said, I'm done with that. And what I'll do in the next set of videos is get down to talking about how the federal withholding tax is calculated. Okay, see you then.